think of the power of the Hiroshima bomb, and you said, how many Hiroshima bombs worth of energy do you think that we're sort of like trapping within the Earth's surface? I think most people would name a pretty low number. Maybe it would be like a single digit number over the course of a year, over the course of a period of time. The number is actually estimated at 4 Hiroshima-sized bombs per second.
You cannot have infinite resources on a finite amount of space. Right. And that's what we're trying to do with the planet. Like we now have more animals on our planet. We take up more acreage now to feed humans than wildlife. Like we crossed that, and I think in the last few years too. So more and more of our planet is just basically our food chain to support humans. And so yeah, I like this idea of circular, like you said, is like, how can we coexist here? So we can keep growing, but you can't do what we just talked about. Like I can't imagine the next 40 years. Now we're at 16 billion people on a fixed amount of space.
Yeah. And I think what stands to reason is you look at when we had our first billion people on the planet, or when we had our first million people on the planet, and you could kind of look at it and say, all of you can kind of run around and do whatever you want. Like it's going to take a long time for this to add up to a problem, or nature's going to kind of regenerate itself faster than you can run around and destroy it. But at some point, again, it stands to reason that the population is going to be big enough that collectively we're faster at being able to destroy things than things can naturally sort of heal and repair themselves. And so unfortunately, I think that is one tipping point we've gotten into. And how do we get into that tipping point? Well, we actually got into it by generating a lot of positive things. Like we generated a lot of productivity. We generated a lot of wealth. We improved the lifestyles of many, many, many people on Earth. And so like these are not bad things. It's just we did them in a very primitive way. Like version 1 was just like, what's the cheapest? What's the most efficient? And I just think version 2 has got to be, what's a way we can do it that lasts? And I think a lot of people are starting to think about that now, and we need way more people thinking about that now and investing in that.
Yeah. I think circularity is the one that I really care about a lot. I think a lot about our waste stream. Where's all that going? And the challenge, of course, is, where are these resources? Where's waste? Where are these? There's a lot of opportunities when it comes to local, but manufacturing is a global thing. And so how do you start to tap in and harness these things on a more local level? And I think if we can start to do that more, then I think there's more ways. But also, like to your point, like everything changed over the last 75 years, really pretty aggressively. Yeah. So I think it's fair to look at everything and say, just because we did it that way doesn't mean we have to keep doing it that way.
Absolutely.
Now, how do we revisit this in a way that really makes sense? And I think it's conversations like this and making sure people are aware like of the impact of things. And one thing I was promoting this week on one of the episodes I shot was this belief that people think, well, if I throw my compost in my trash, it's just going to decompose. And I've heard this multiple times to the point my wife was telling me, you got to put this on your episode, because she thought that. I was like, wait a minute. You think you can throw your banana peel on top of all the plastic? Like, no, that thing's done. And so it's just simple things like that maybe people just assumed until you kind of peel the onion a little bit. You realize like, actually, no, that thing is now trash.
Yeah, and not to mention that when you put food waste and it gets trapped and doesn't have access to oxygen, then it actually starts to produce methane gas, which is 30 or more times more harmful than CO2, and from a global warming standpoint. So yeah, and like just to your point about all of this happening over the last 75 years, the interesting thing is, of course, kind of mapping that curve of human growth and then mapping that curve of like population growth and then mapping that curve of GHG emissions. So when you use the term waste, I think a lot of people don't really sort of think about us burning things as waste, right? But we basically, the best analogy I've heard somebody say is like we're using our air like an open sewer, right? It's sort of like believe that, I don't know, it goes up there and at some point it blows away. Like it's okay. But the reality is
it goes out into space.
It's totally trapped in our atmosphere. And like you said, the 50 billion tons of GHG emissions that are getting emitted on an annual basis. And the impact of that is just getting so clear. I heard this other stat from someone, I shared it with you the other day, because it was so moving to me. But if you asked people to kind of think of the power of the Hiroshima bomb and just how much energy you picture that happening, and you said, how many Hiroshima bombs worth of energy do you think that we're sort of like trapping within the Earth's surface and Earth's atmosphere because of all of the particulate and so on that we've put in the air so far? I think most people would name a pretty low number. Maybe it would be like a single digit number over the course of a year, over the course of a period of time. The number is actually estimated at 4 Hiroshima-sized bombs per second.
Yeah, a second. Yeah, I could not believe that when you emailed that to me. I expected it to be big, but not that big.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's why June was now the hottest month on record in 125,000 years, and then we rolled into July, and 3 of the first days in July consecutively broke the hottest day in human history, human recorded history.
Every continent has hit the hottest it's ever been.
Yeah. That's a global average.
And you think about the percentage of the population that lives on or around the equator. I mean, they're the ones that are going to be most affected as things really heat up. I think Death Valley was 130 something degrees, which is also a record.
Yeah.
So that's just troubling. And, I often describe this to people that don't understand really climate and necessarily kind of how the atmosphere works. And I said, here's the best analogy I've seen. Go open your car on a hot sunny day. Maybe it's 80 degrees out, but your car is 125 degrees. Well, why is that? It's because that heat is trapped in there and they can't escape. And our atmosphere is a great, awesome thing. That's why we're all alive. But it's also pretty, but it only can hold so much. So some CO2 and things are released out of that. But, you heat that thing up really, really hot. It's no different than, your car on a hot sunny day. And I think that we're really starting to see that. And so hopefully people can start to grok and understand when we talk about global warming, it's really extreme weather patterns. Yes, it's going to get hotter, but guess what? Come winter, we're also going to have extreme, winters. And that's going to be the nature of things until we as humans decide to actually make changes.